Wrap an object onto the surface of another object just like a material using UV maps with the Mesh Materializer Blender add-on. To install the add-on in Blender, go to Edit Preferences, select the Add-ons tab if it isn't already, and click the Install button. Select the zip file you downloaded and then click Install Add-on. Then the add-on should appear in the list of other add-ons. Make sure the checkbox is ticked next to it. Let's do a simple example first. In the default scene, add a torus object and move it to the side of the cube. With the torus object selected, press Shift and then click the cube. Both objects should then be selected. Right-click in the viewport and select Mesh Materializer Create UV Mesh, or just press the small checkered cube at the top of the viewport. This will create a new object which maps a copy of the torus onto the cube using the cube's UV map. It may look a little ugly at first because the source object is stretched along the whole UV tile by default. Any vertices that do not map to a UV island are automatically deleted. With this new object selected, go to the Modifiers tab. The new object has a special Mesh Materializer modifier added, which uses geometry nodes to wrap a copy of the torus onto the cube using the cube's UV map. In the modifier, try reducing the offset scale parameter to 0.1 in all three axes so we can see the torus better. The X direction of the object has been mapped to the U direction of the UV map, and the Y direction of the object has been mapped to the V direction. As a UV map doesn't really contain a Z direction, we add thickness to the object via the height parameter, set to 1 by default. We can now move the object across the surface using the offset position parameters. To better understand where the object is being projected in UV space, tick the Preview UVs option and use the preview position and preview scale parameters to bring the preview closer to the view. You may also want to change the preview height. Switch the preview mode off again by unticking the Preview UVs option. Select the torus and add an array modifier, increasing its count to about 5. Duplicate the array modifier, and then set the direction to 0, 1, 0. You'll see all these changes update on the new object. Select the new object again and change the offset and height parameters to adjust how the object is wrapped onto the surface. Changing the position of the cube also changes the position of this new object. If the model looks a bit distorted along its height, try ticking the Use Face Normals option. By default, the add-on extrudes the objects using the vertex normals of the object. For lower poly meshes, using the face normals can produce a better result. In the next example, we'll map a spiral object onto a spherical egg shape. Checking the UV map, we have a nice unwrapped grid we can map the spiral onto. You can make this UV grid by using the Follow Active Quads feature in Blender, or by using the UV Squares add-on linked in the description. Tab out of Edit mode and select the spiral. Pressing Tab to check this object, we already have some good quad topology that can be deformed nicely. Press Tab to go into Object mode again and press Shift to select the egg shape. Right-click again and select Create UV Mesh from the Mesh Materializer menu. Here, the object is a little too thick by default, so reduce the height parameter until you are happy. Switching the preview mode on, you can see how the spiral is mapped, However, it is being cropped by the UV map on the edge. Reducing the offset scale parameter can address this. Switch the preview UVs mode off and you will have a spiral pattern wrapping around the egg. Changing the offset rotation parameter will also rotate the spiral effect. In this example, we'll map an object onto an item of clothing. This model of a jacket was downloaded from Sketchfab and linked in the description. It already has a good UV map which can be seen in the UV editing tab. Go to the modeling tab and make sure you are in object mode. Here I have modelled a very basic rectangular badge shape which I'm going to map onto the model's chest. Select it first, then press Shift and select the jacket last. This time, press the checkered box button at the top of the viewport to perform the same Create UV Mesh operation. Use the offset scale parameter to shrink down the object. Activate Preview UVs mode and move and scale the preview so we can see where the object is being mapped. It is just being cut off at the neck seam, so use the offset position parameter to move the object down. Switch off preview mode and you'll notice the object is at the back of the jacket. Change the offset position X parameter to move it around to the front of the jacket. Adjust the offset position Z parameter a little so that the object sits a little above the jacket. Pressing the Shift key whilst changing a parameter will make smaller incremental changes. Continue to adjust the offset position parameter until you are happy. You may also want to change the offset scale parameters to get the right proportions for the badge. Perhaps we'd like to wrap a tire pattern around this cylindrical shaped object. First, select the cylinder object and go to the UV Editing tab. On the right hand side, go to the Object Data Properties tab and expand the UV Maps section. You'll see that I have created two UV maps. One I can use for more traditional texturing purposes and another for the add-on. You can switch between the two in the editor by clicking on each one. If you'd like to hear how I made the second UV map that wraps around the cylinder, stick around to the end. First, make sure the second UV map is selected, as this tells the add-on which UV map to use. Then, select the tire pattern, which will be the source object, and then press Shift and select the cylinder shape last, which is the target object. Now, click the Create UV Mesh button. This creates a new object as before that represents the wrapped object. With this new object now selected, go to the Modifiers tab to edit the Mesh Materializer modifier. Preview the UV mapping again by switching on the Preview UVs checkbox, changing the preview to bring it near the viewport. In this case, reduce the offset scale X parameter to about 0.8. This will reduce the width of the object mapping in UV space and stop any edges being trimmed off from the UV map. Now, switch the preview mode back off again to see the result. Reduce the height of the wrapped object to make it more in proportion. Then increase the offset position Z parameter to make it sit slightly above the top of the cylinder object. Before we're done, look beneath the cylinder. You'll see that the tyre treads aren't quite joining up because they are at either end of the UV mapping. We can fix this by adjusting the offset scale Y parameter to something really close to 1 instead, something like 0.9998 in this case. Then add a weld modifier to the object and set the distance parameter to 0.01. This should weld the end vertices together, making the gap disappear. There are more options to explore in the documentation linked in the description, but do not hesitate to contact us via info@configurate.net if you have any questions or issues. Now, here's how to make the UV map for the cylinder. Make sure all the faces are selected and go to View, Viewport, Top in the viewport. Then go to UV Project from View. Then, in the viewport, press Shift and click one of the faces at the top of the cylinder twice to make sure it is the active face. Then, go to the UV menu again and click Follow Active Quads. This will create a flat UV map that wraps around the cylinder, using the active quad face as a guide. Finally, go to UV Pack Islands to make sure the UV map is within the boundary of the UV tile. Alternatively, if you have the UV Squares add-on, simply select the faces in the UV editor and on the side panel, click to Grid by Shape. We hope all this helps, and do get in touch if you have any issues by emailing info@configurate.net. Also, check out the tips and troubleshooting section in the documentation linked in the description. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.